This is Juan Brown with a special by request video of how to set up your tractive suspension on the Rally Raid CB500X Level 3 conversion. The steps that we go over in this procedure should pertain to all three levels of conversion using the tractive suspension. For this job, you're going to need to hang on to your tractive suspension owner's manual and look for this tool when you get your kit. This isn't like I originally thought, a complementary screwdriver. This is your tractive preload tool for turning the preload spring on the tractive shock. I was looking for a spanner, but you don't need it. All you need is this. You're going to need a tape measure and something to write with, and we're going to do some simple math, some simple subtraction math to make these numbers work. Suspension is one of the most important and first things you always want to address when you're working on a new motorcycle or a new to you used motorcycle. All the horsepower in the world, all the changing around of the engine and exhaust and induction system just isn't going to help unless you're properly putting that horsepower to the ground. So when I get a new bike or a new used bike, one of the first things I want to do is set up the suspension. If the bike doesn't ride right, it should be no surprise as a used bike because it's probably set up to accommodate the previous owner, or the previous owner has messed up the suspension. So the only way to prevent from chasing your tail around constantly is to go back and set the suspension back up to the stock settings and then go from there. Now, on the Rally Raid Level 3 conversion, the shocks, the rear shock as they send it to you is basically set up and ready to go if you've got the right spring weight for your weight. There's very little adjustment that really needs to be done on the Rally Raid kit, but we're going to go over the procedure just to show you what all the points of adjustment are. Now, inside of your tractive shock tool is all the bits that you need to tune your suspension. Your biggest point of adjustment is the preload, setting the preload on the rear shock spring using this adjusting nut right here. You're going to get the small bit, the 2.5 bit on your tractive tool and loosen up the lock nut. Don't take it out, just loosen it up. Then you're going to take the bigger D6 bit and fit it into one of these holes here and adjust that nut to tighten up or loosen up the preload on your shock spring. For fine points of adjustment, you're going to get your H4 bit, and that will allow you to turn your clickers for high speed and low speed dampening on your rear shock. Now, this is mounted on the frame here temporarily or for now. Remember, initially this was mounted up here on the water pump and was routed through here, but after extensive field work we've determined that it does in fact get pretty warm being mounted right up here on the water pump. So most of us have elected to reroute and mount this rear reservoir here onto the frame, and soon Rally Raid's going to have a nice little bracket that we can purchase to attach this to instead of just bolting it on the frame. This does hit your rear of your leg a little bit mounted here. Also on the rear shock, your rebound dampening is adjusted with this clicker located on the bottom of the rear shock. Now, I can't quite get in here with my tractive tool, but you can easily get in there with an Allen wrench and adjust that clicker. And on the front forks, your point of adjustment is to set the preload using that screw right there. Now, I haven't put any gaiters on my front forks yet. I still just get a scraper tool and get down here and clean this thing out periodically. But a good set of gaiters on here would help preserve your fork legs. Now let's do the numbers. The first number you need to determine is the sag on the bike, the amount of sag. The whole idea of determining the amount of sag is to make sure that you've got the right spring weight for your weight. Now there's two forms of sag that we're looking for. The free sag of the bike itself without a rider on it, and the amount of sag of the bike with you on it and all your riding gear. The key point when you're measuring sag is having a consistent measuring point. It's not a specific number we're looking for so much as it is a specific difference in numbers that we're looking for. So I like to mount the tape measure. Just grab the bottom of the nut down there and then find a point that the tape measure rises vertically from this point here to your next measuring point. And I've made a little black mark here on the tail piece to locate this spot right here. And as you do all your different sag measurements, just use the same point. Now in order to do this for the first time correctly, you're going to need your stand to get the bike up off the ground, and you're going to need an assistant to help you with measuring, of which I have neither today, but I've got all the math from the last time I did it on this bike, and I can show you the procedure. Now since we've extensively modified this bike with the rally rate suspension, what do we set the sag to? What are the numbers? Well, Tractive here has the basic guidelines that your free sag should be approximately 10% of the total travel of the rear shock, and your rider sag should be approximately 30% of your total travel of the rear shock. So let's see how that works. Now we know from Rally Raid that after we get done modifying this bike with the level 3 suspension, we should have about a total of 7.5 inches of suspension travel, or 19.05 centimeters. It's going to be much easier to convert everything from inches to centimeters so you're not dealing with fractions. Free sag wants to be 10% of that number, so about 1.9 centimeters or 3/4 inches. Ride height, or as KTM calls it, race sag, should be about 30% of this number, or about 5.7 centimeters or 2¼ inches. Now if you've selected the correct spring, you know it comes in 3 different weights, light, medium, or stiff. For your rider weight, when you get this Tractive shock from out of the box from the factory, it's going to be pretty spot on as soon as you bolt it onto the bike. When you want to go adventure riding and you want to put 30 to 40 pounds of camping gear on the back of this bike, if you do Jenny's recommendation of just cranking down the preload by 2 full turns, again, your sag will turn out to be pretty much spot on, and that's what I found with my numbers. Another important point is to write all these numbers down for future reference. Keep them with your records on the bike. The first dimension we need is with the weight off the wheels and the rear shock fully extended. We'll call that dimension B per the Tractive manual, and when I measured it up on the stand, I came up with 25 inches or 635 millimeters for dimension B. The next dimension I need is just the weight of the bike on its wheels. So off the stand it goes, and on its wheels, balance the bike carefully and measure that distance. I came up with 24 1/4 inches for dimension C, which converts to 616 millimeters. Again, transfer it to millimeters just to avoid fractions. Finally, we take measurement D with me on the bike and all my riding gear, how much that distance is from the axle to here. It worked out to about 23 inches or 584 millimeters. Now let's do the math. Page 5 of your Tractive manual explains how to do the math, and here's what we found on the free sag. Dimension B minus dimension C worked out to about 1.9 centimeters or 3/4 inch, which is just exactly 10% of the full amount of travel. Ride height, or ride sag, dimension B minus dimension D worked out to 5.7 centimeters, about 2¼ inches, which worked out to be just right at 30% of the wheel travel. So right out of the box, the Tractive shock worked out perfectly. Now if you want to decrease these sag values, you're going to have to increase the preload on the rear shock spring. each full turn of the preload adjustment ring equals about 1.5 millimeters difference in sag. Once you've got your sag properly set, be sure and tighten back up your set screw to lock it in. It's always a good idea to get this set screw in a position where you can easily reach it with your tools. Then you can go through the whole procedure again once you get all your adventure and camping gear on your bike. Or you could just crank up the preload 2 full turns and double check the numbers, and you'll find that you're going to be pretty spot on. Once you have the rear shock set up, there really is no measurement on the front forks the way we measured the sag on the rear forks. Now, I'm no suspension expert, but what you want is when you sit on these adventure bikes with all your gear on it, or whichever configuration you're going to be riding on, when you sit on it, you want the bike to settle down evenly. You don't want it to favor one direction or the other as far as sag goes. So if you're going to crank up the rear preload on the rear shock for the weight of your camping gear, I would recommend stiffening up your front forks an equal amount by increasing the preload. Consider another full 2 turns on the preload on the front shocks. And this is going to be where the art meets science of suspension. From here on out, you're going to be adjusting your suspension based on the feel. When you're making small adjustments to these clickers, make them small. Don't take huge adjustments. Let's review what the stock settings are on these clickers. Before we start talking about fine-tuning the clickers, let me see if I can explain what the clickers do. High and low speed compression dampening. High speed compression dampening. It has nothing to do with the speed of the motorcycle racing down the track. It has to do with the speed of the suspension working. If you're hitting high speed bumps, the high speed compression dampening is the adjustment you want to deal with. And on each of these clickers, if you want to dampen the action of each clicker, you turn the clicker clockwise. If you want to increase the action of this clicker, you turn the clicker counterclockwise. Low speed compression dampening. That's when you're hitting big, slow whoop-de-doos and you're bottoming out too quickly. You can increase or decrease the low speed compression dampening. The rebound clicker, or rebound compression dampening, located on the bottom of the shock, determines or adjusts how quickly the shock rebounds or how quickly it extends after it's been compressed. Now, from the factory, these clickers come adjusted at 9 clicks. What is 9 clicks? Well, you turn the clicker all the way in clockwise until it bottoms out. Don't force it when it hits bottom, and then back it up 9 clicks, and you'll feel it firmly click each time. 9 clicks on both the high speed and low speed compression dampening, and 9 clicks on the rebound dampening is the stock setup out of the box from Tractive. And you can fine tune it from there using your art meets science techniques. Also, look in the Tractive manual. They've got a lot of troubleshooting, suspension troubleshooting tips that you can follow that can help you with doing the fine tuning and adjustment on your clickers. So with the tunable and properly tuned Tractive suspension on your Rally Raid 3 converted CB500X, you've taken a bike and completely changed its characteristic. You've taken the stock CB500X, which is a adventure styled motorcycle, and converted it into a truly capable lightweight adventure machine. The Rally Raid Level 3 conversion on the Honda CB500X using Tractive suspension components. Stay tuned for all the adventures I've been posting there on YouTube. I've got the Great Desert Southwest adventure coming up next. 3,000 miles all across the desert Southwest. It was a fantastic ride. No troubles at all with the bike. Got over 14,000 miles on the machine so far. No troubles.